I've spent the last 3 years trying to find these stories again, not because I wanted to relive them. God knows I've tried to forget, but because I needed proof that I wasn't losing my mind. These 4 incidents happened on different Halloweens in different states to different people. But they all share one thing in common. Within 72 hours of being reported, every single news article, police blotter entry, and local broadcast segment about them vanished, just gone, scrubbed clean like they never existed at all. I only know about them because I was there. Not physically present for all of them, but connected, a freelance journalist who stumbled into the wrong rabbit hole at exactly the right time. Or maybe the wrong time? I'm still not sure which. What I am sure of is this. Someone very powerful wanted these stories buried, and they almost succeeded. Almost. Let me take you back to where it started for me. October 29th, 2019. I was living in a converted loft in Providence, Rhode Island, chasing local interest pieces to pay rent and drinking too much coffee in diners where the waitresses knew my order by heart. The Halloween season was always good for content, allegedly haunted locations, pumpkin festivals, that sort of easy filler. But that night, around 11:43 p.m., I received an email that changed everything. The sender's address was a string of random numbers and letters. The subject line read, "They're erasing her." No greeting, no explanation, just a link to a news article from the Willow Creek Gazette, a small-town paper in Oregon I'd never heard of. The article was dated October 31st, 2015, and the headline made my skin prickle. Local woman found unresponsive in corn maze, claims they're still in there. I clicked the link at 11:47 p.m. By 11:52 p.m., the page returned a 404 error. 5 minutes. That's all the time I had with it. But I'm a journalist. I take screenshots. I save everything. And what I read in those 5 minutes kept me awake until the sun came up. The first story, Willow Creek, Oregon, October 31st, 2015. The woman's name was Sarah Kincaid. 32 years old, elementary school teacher, lived in Willow Creek her entire life. The article was sparse, written in that careful, neutral tone local papers use when they're not quite sure what they're reporting. Sarah had been discovered at 6:47 a.m. on November 1st by 2 high school boys cutting through Merrick Farm's corn maze on their way to school. She was sitting cross-legged in the center of the maze, soaking wet despite the fact that it hadn't rained in 11 days, staring at nothing, unresponsive. Paramedics arrived. Sarah was conscious but wouldn't speak, wouldn't move, wouldn't even blink when they shined lights in her eyes. Her body temperature was 53 degrees, hypothermic levels that should have killed her. But she was alive. Technically. According to the article, Sarah had entered the corn maze around 8 p.m. on Halloween night with 3 friends, Kelly Brennan, Marcus Voss, and David Ruiz. The maze was one of those elaborate seasonal attractions designed to take about 45 minutes to complete. When Sarah's friends emerged at 8:52 p.m., she wasn't with them. They assumed she'd already made it out and was waiting at the entrance. She wasn't. They called her phone. No answer. They went back into the maze, called her name, walked every pathway twice. By 9:30 p.m., they alerted the farm's owner, who brought flashlights and 3 staff members. By 10:15 p.m., they'd called the police. By 11 p.m., search teams were combing through the 7-acre maze with thermal imaging equipment. They found nothing. Not until sunrise, when those 2 boys stumbled across her. Here's what haunted me most. Sarah had been sitting in a section of the maze that the search teams had swept 4 separate times during the night. 4 times, and she wasn't there. Until suddenly she was. The article ended with a quote from Police Chief Raymond Talbot. Ms. Kincaid is currently receiving medical attention. We are treating this as a health emergency, not a criminal investigation at this time. That last phrase, at this time, felt like a door left deliberately ajar. I spent the rest of that night trying to find follow-up articles, hospital records, police reports, social media posts from Sarah's friends. Nothing. Not one single additional piece of information. It was like the story had been dropped mid-sentence and everyone involved had agreed to never speak of it again. But I did find something else, something the article hadn't mentioned. I found a grainy cell phone video uploaded to YouTube on November the 2nd, 2015, then taken down less than an hour later. But the internet is forever if you know where to look, and I know where to look. Someone had re-uploaded it to a paranormal forum I occasionally browsed for story ideas. The video was titled "Corn Maze Sounds. Help, what is this?" The footage was shaky, filmed vertically in the dark. The timestamp in the corner read 10:48 p.m., October 31st, 2015. You could hear voices in the background, people calling Sarah's name. The camera was pointed down one of the narrow pathways between the towering stalks of corn, the beam of a flashlight cutting through the blackness. And then, at the 12-second mark, you could hear it, a sound that didn't belong. It started low, almost beneath the range of hearing, a hum, rhythmic and wrong, like a voice trying to form words but lacking the structure of human speech. The person filming stopped walking. The flashlight beam trembled. "Do you hear that?" a male voice whispered off camera. "Shut up," someone else hissed. "Sarah! Sarah!" The hum grew louder. No, not louder. Closer. It was moving toward them, or they were moving toward it. The perspective in the darkness made it impossible to tell. And then, just before the video cut off, there was a sound I will never forget. It was laughter. High, childlike, joyful, but wrong. Wrong in a way that made my stomach clench. It sounded like multiple voices layered over each other, slightly out of sync, creating a dissonant echo that made my teeth ache. The video ended abruptly, 23 seconds total. I watched it 14 times that night, and each time I heard something new buried in the audio, whispers beneath the laughter, syllables that almost formed words. By the 14th replay, I thought I could make out 3 distinct phrases repeating, "She stayed," "She listened," "She's ours." Now, I tried to tell myself it was pareidolia, the human brain's tendency to find patterns in random noise, but I didn't believe it, because I'd heard that same wrongness once before, years ago, in a place I've tried very hard to forget. When dawn finally came, I made a decision. I was going to find Sarah Kincaid. I was going to ask her what happened in that maze. I was going to make someone explain why her story had been erased. It took me 6 days to track down a current phone number. When I called, a man answered, her brother, I later learned. I explained who I was, that I wanted to talk to Sarah about what happened at Merrick Farm. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "My sister doesn't speak anymore," he said finally. His voice was flat, exhausted. "Not since that night. Doctors say there's nothing physically wrong with her vocal cords. She just won't talk, won't write anything down. If you try to hand her a pen, she drops it. If you ask her questions, she stares at the wall. The only thing she does is draw." "Draw what?" I asked. Another pause. Longer this time. "Corn, just corn. Over and over, hundreds of pages, all corn." "Can I see her?" I pressed. "Just for a few minutes. I promise I won't upset her." "She's already upset," he said quietly. She's been upset for 4 years, but sure. Come by. Maybe you'll understand something we don't. God knows we've given up trying. I flew to Oregon the next day. Sarah lived in a small ranch house on the outskirts of Willow Creek, surrounded by farmland that stretched to the horizon in every direction. Her brother Michael met me at the door. He looked older than his 40 years, with deep circles under his eyes and the wary expression of someone who'd stopped hoping for good news a long time ago. "She's in the back room," he said, leading me through a dim hallway lined with family photos. I noticed that all the pictures of Sarah stopped around 2015. After that, it was just Michael, their parents, nieces and nephews, everyone except her. The back room had been converted into a studio of sorts. An easel stood by the window, though it wasn't being used. Instead, the floor was covered, and I mean covered, with drawings. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands, all rendered in pencil or charcoal on whatever paper was available. Printer paper, newspaper margins, the backs of envelopes, pages torn from books. Every single one depicted corn. Not cartoonish corn or stylized corn, photorealistic corn, drawn with obsessive precision. The stalks, the leaves, the tassels, the shadows between them. Some drawings showed close-ups of individual stalks. Others showed vast fields stretching to vanishing points. Some were from inside the corn, looking out. Some were from above, looking down. But they all shared one detail that made my skin crawl. In every single drawing, somewhere hidden in the patterns of stalks and shadows, there were eyes. Not obvious, not cartoony, just there, watching from the negative space. Sometimes you could only see them if you tilted your head or stepped back. But once you saw them, you couldn't unsee them. Sarah sat in a chair by the window, dressed in an oversized sweater despite the room's warmth, staring out at the fields beyond. She didn't turn when we entered, didn't acknowledge our presence at all. "Sarah," Michael said gently, "someone's here to see you. He wants to ask about Halloween, about the maze." For several seconds, nothing happened. Then slowly, Sarah's head turned. Her eyes found mine, and I understood immediately why her brother sounded so defeated. Sarah wasn't there, not really. She was looking at me, but she wasn't seeing me. She was seeing through me, past me, at something only she could perceive. "Hi, Sarah," I said, keeping my voice soft. "My name's Ben. I'm trying to understand what happened to you that night. Can you help me understand?" No response. Just that distant, empty stare. I glanced at Michael. He shrugged helplessly. I tried a different approach. "Sarah, in the corn maze, did you see something, hear something?" "Nothing." "Did someone hurt you?" "Nothing. Are you scared of—" Sarah's hand shot out so fast I flinched backward. She grabbed my wrist with surprising strength, her fingernails digging into my skin. Michael started forward, but I waved him off. Sarah was pulling me toward the easel, toward the papers scattered across the floor. Her grip was vice-tight, her breathing suddenly rapid and shallow. She released me and dropped to her knees, frantically sorting through the drawings. Papers flew everywhere as she searched for something specific. Finally, she found it. A larger sheet, maybe 2 feet by 3 feet, rendered in charcoal so dark it seemed to absorb the light around it. She held it up with trembling hands. The drawing showed the interior of a corn maze at night. The perspective was from ground level, looking up at the stalks towering overhead. Between the stalks you could see pieces of sky, except the sky was wrong. It wasn't black or dark blue, it was a deep, bruised purple, and it was full of holes, not stars, holes, ragged openings that revealed something writhing behind the night itself, something with too many angles and not enough space. And in the Center of the drawing, rendered in perfect detail, was a child, maybe 7 or 8 years old, wearing a Halloween costume, a white sheet with eye holes cut out, a ghost, the classic, innocent kind. The child stood perfectly still, facing away from the viewer deeper in the maze. The truly disturbing part was the child's shadow. It stretched across the ground, cast by some unseen light source, but the shadow didn't match the child's shape. The shadow had too many limbs, too many joints. It spread across the earth like a stain, and within the shadow, dozens of tiny handprints were visible, pressed up from underneath, as if something buried was trying to claw its way to the surface. Sarah was breathing hard now, her eyes wild and wet. She jabbed her finger at the child in the drawing, then at herself, then back at the child. The message was clear. This was there. This is what I saw. "The child in the costume?" I asked. "You saw this in the maze?" She nodded violently, her whole body shaking. Did it do something to you?" She opened her mouth. No sound came out, but her lips moved, forming words I could read. It invited me to play. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "And did you?" I whispered. "Did you play?" Sarah's expression crumpled. Tears spilled down her cheeks. She pointed at the shadow in the drawing again, then placed her hand over her own heart. Then she shook her head, not a no, but a gesture of incomprehension, of something too large and terrible to communicate. Michael stepped forward and gently took the drawing from her hands. "That's enough," he said quietly. "She gets like this. She'll have nightmares for a week now." But Sarah wasn't done. She grabbed another drawing. This one showed just the corn, the stalks drawn so densely they created an almost solid wall of black. And hidden within the black, written in tiny, cramped letters that spiraled and overlapped until they became almost illegible, was a single sentence repeated thousands of times. "They're still playing and they're still winning, and they're still there and they're still playing and they're still winning, and they're still there and they're still playing," and on, filling every inch of negative space. I left Willow Creek that evening with more questions than answers, and a photograph of Sarah's drawings that I still can't look at for more than a few seconds without feeling physically ill. Michael walked me to my rental car as the sun set over the endless fields. "The maze?" I asked him. "Merrick Farm. Does it still operate?" He shook his head. "Closed down November the 2nd, 2015. Owner sold the property, moved to Idaho. New owner tore out all the corn, planted wheat instead. But here's the thing." He trailed off, staring out at the darkening horizon. "People still report seeing lights out there at night. Not flashlights or headlights, something else. Something that moves wrong. And every Halloween since Sarah was found, at least one kid in town goes missing for a few hours. They always turn up eventually, disoriented, can't remember where they were, but they all say the same thing. What's that? They followed someone in a costume, a child dressed as a ghost. The child knew their name." The second story, Ashford, Connecticut, October 31st, 2017. I didn't receive the tip about this one via email. I found it myself 2 weeks after visiting Sarah, while obsessively searching local news archives for any Halloween-related incidents that matched certain criteria: unexplained disappearances, strange behavior, stories that seemed to end prematurely or without resolution. Ashford popped up in my search at 2:33 a.m. on a Tuesday. I'd been at it for 6 hours straight, my eyes burning, my third pot of coffee going cold. The article was from the Ashford Chronicle, dated November the 2nd, 2017. The headline read, "Doorbell camera captures impossible footage. Family seeks answers." The article was brief. A family in Ashford, the Whitmans, names included, had reviewed their doorbell camera footage from Halloween night and discovered something disturbing. The article didn't specify what exactly, only that the footage showed an individual in costume exhibiting behavior that defies logical explanation, and that the family had reported the incident to local police, who were reviewing the material. The article ended with a quote from Detective Laura Chen. "We take all reports seriously, but at this time we have no reason to believe any crime was committed. This appears to be an elaborate prank or possible camera malfunction." Possible camera malfunction. That phrase again, the institutional retreat into comfortable explanations. I found the article at 2:33 a.m. By 2:45 a.m. it was gone, deleted. And this time I hadn't taken a screenshot. I tried the Wayback Machine, Google's cache, every trick. I knew nothing. The article had been there and then it hadn't, and I had no proof. But I had names, the Whitmans. And Ashford, Connecticut was small enough that finding them wouldn't be difficult. It took 3 phone calls and one very helpful woman at the local library before I had an address. I showed up unannounced on a Saturday afternoon, hoping the element of surprise would work in my favor. James Whitman answered the door, mid-40s, beard going grey, wearing a Yukon sweatshirt and an expression of immediate suspicion. "We're not interested," he said, before I could introduce myself. "I'm not selling anything. I'm a journalist, and I'm researching Halloween incidents that have been—" "No," he interrupted. "Whatever you think you know, you don't. And I'm not discussing it. We were told very clearly that talking about this would cause problems for our family. So please leave." "Told by who?" I asked. "The police? Someone else?" His jaw tightened. "Leave. Now!" A woman appeared behind him, his wife, presumably. She put a hand on his arm. "James, maybe we should—" "No, Karen," we agreed. But Karen was looking at me with something in her eyes I recognized. It was the same look I'd seen in Michael's eyes, the look of someone carrying a weight they desperately wanted to set down. "Were you there?" she asked me. "On Halloween? Did you see it too?" "I wasn't there," I admitted. "But I've seen other things, things that got erased from the record, things people were told not to talk about." She studied my face for a long moment, then made a decision. "Come in, quickly." James started to protest, but she silenced him with a look that suggested this argument had been happening in various forms for 2 years. I followed them inside. Their home was typical suburban, clean, comfortable, decorated with children's artwork and family photos. But I noticed immediately that there was no Halloween decoration anywhere. Not one. In a neighborhood where every other house still had pumpkins and fake spiderwebs, the Whitman house stood out by its deliberate absence of anything remotely festive. We sat in their living room. Karen offered coffee, which I accepted. James sat, with his arms crossed, radiating hostility but staying silent. "Our daughter, Emma, was 11 at the time," Karen began. "She went trick-or-treating with her older brother Lucas. He was 14. We have a Ring doorbell camera, motion-activated. It records everyone who comes to the door. We always review the footage the next day," James added reluctantly, apparently deciding that if this conversation was happening, he might as well participate. "It's fun. You get to see all the costumes, wave at neighbors, that sort of thing." "But that year," Karen continued, her voice dropping, "when we watched the footage from Halloween night, we saw something that shouldn't have been possible." She pulled out her phone, scrolled through her photo library, and handed it to me. On the screen was a photograph of a computer monitor displaying Ring camera footage. The timestamp read 8:47 p.m. October 31st, 2017. The image showed their front porch from the camera's elevated angle. Standing directly in front of the door were 2 figures. Based on their heights and the description, I assumed these were Emma and Lucas, Emma was dressed as a vampire, Lucas as a zombie. Between them stood a third figure, shorter than Emma, maybe 4 feet tall, wearing a costume I recognized immediately. A white sheet with eye holes cut out. A ghost. My blood ran cold. "We don't know this child," Karen said. "We asked Emma and Lucas about it later. They said they'd been trick-or-treating alone all night, just the two of them. They had no memory of anyone dressed as a ghost, no memory of anyone joining them at all." "Show him the rest," James said quietly. Karen took the phone back, swiped to the next image. Same porch, same angle, timestamp, now reading 8:47 p.m. and 12 seconds. Emma and Lucas had moved. They were turning toward the camera, laughing about something, but the ghost child hadn't moved at all, hadn't shifted position even slightly. It stood perfectly, impossibly still, facing the door. Next image, 8:47 p.m., 16 seconds. Emma was reaching for the doorbell. Lucas was looking at his phone. The ghost child's position still hadn't changed. Next image, 8:47 p.m., 19 seconds. And here's where my hands started shaking. The ghost child had turned its head, not its body, just its head, rotated at an angle that was almost anatomically possible, but not quite, like whoever was under the sheet had slightly too much flexibility in their neck. The eye holes in the sheet were now facing directly at the camera. And inside those eye holes, you could see darkness. Not the darkness of a child's face in shadow. Empty darkness, the kind of black that has depth, that suggests vast spaces behind it. "Keep going," James said. His voice had gone hoarse. Next image, 8:47 p.m., 23 seconds. Emma was now visible through the door's window. It had opened, and she was talking to someone inside, presumably Karen. Lucas was looking at his phone, and the ghost child was closer to the camera. Much closer. It had moved at least 6 feet in 4 seconds, but there was no motion blur, no transitional position. It was simply in a new location, as if frames of the video had been removed. The eye holes were now large enough that I could see what was inside them clearly. Nothing, absolute nothing, but somehow the nothing was looking at me. "Last one," Karen whispered. She swiped to the final image. Timestamp, 8:47 p.m., 26 seconds. The ghost child's sheet filled the entire frame. It was pressed up against the camera, the fabric texture visible in horrible detail. And written across the sheet in what looked like a child's handwriting, in letters that appeared to be bleeding through from the inside, were 3 words: "We see you." I set the phone down carefully, afraid my trembling hands would drop it. "The police watched this footage," James said. 3 officers, including a detective. They watched it in our living room. We all sat here together and watched that thing move toward the camera. We watched it write those words. And when it was done, Detective Chen stood up, told us that doorbell cameras were known to malfunction, especially on Halloween, when there's a lot of electromagnetic interference from all the decorations and lights in the neighborhood. "Electromagnetic interference," Karen repeated bitterly. That was her explanation, for writing, for words that appeared on a costume. She told us the camera had glitched, created artifacts that looked like text. She told us our children were probably playing a prank and had someone else hide around the corner. She told us a lot of things that didn't make sense and expected us to smile and nod and accept it. "But here's what really bothered me," James said, leaning forward. 2 days after that meeting, the footage was gone. Deleted from our Ring account. Not by us, by Ring itself. We contacted their customer service and they said our account had been flagged for data corruption and the corrupted files had been automatically purged for security reasons. When I pushed back, when I said we'd made backups, the customer service rep got quiet and then told me that distributing footage that had been flagged for corruption violated our terms of service and could result in legal action. Legal action, Karen echoed, for sharing video from our own doorbell camera. Did you distribute it? I asked. Post it online? Send it to anyone? We sent it to Karen's brother, James said. He's a video forensics expert, works for a security company in Boston. We wanted him to analyze it, tell us if it had been tampered with or edited somehow. He sent us back a 3-page report. Want to know what it said? I nodded. It said the footage was genuine, unedited, no evidence of manipulation or digital artifacts. The movement of the figure wasn't consistent with any known video error or compression artifact. The words on the sheet appeared organically, as if they were actually present on the physical costume. His conclusion was that the footage showed exactly what it appeared to show, something impossible. And then, I prompted, and then he called us, very upset, and told us to delete everything. Delete the footage, delete his report, delete our emails to him, and never speak of it again. He said men in suits had visited his office. They didn't identify themselves, didn't show badges or credentials. They just asked him about the video he'd analyzed, asked him if he'd shared his findings with anyone. When he tried to play dumb, they told him the names of his children, the school they attended, the route his wife took to work every morning. They didn't make explicit threats. They didn't have to. The living room was very quiet. Outside, I could hear children playing in a neighbor's yard, their laughter high and innocent, and completely unaware that sometimes children in costumes weren't children at all. Did Emma or Lucas ever remember anything else? I asked. Dreams? Flashbacks? Anything? Karen and James exchanged a look. Emma has nightmares, Karen said finally. She won't tell us what they're about, but she sleeps with her lights on now and she refuses to go outside after dark. And last month she asked us if she could change her name. She said she didn't like her name anymore, said it didn't feel like hers, said she felt like someone else had been using it, wearing it, and now it was dirty. Karen's voice cracked. She's 13 years old and she wants to change her name because something made her feel like it didn't belong to her anymore. I thought about the child in the ghost costume, turning its head toward the camera. Thought about the words, bleeding through the sheet. We see you, not I see you. We? Can I ask one more question? I said. Go ahead, James replied. We've already violated enough warnings. What's one more? The costume, the white sheet ghost. Have either of you ever seen anyone wearing that exact costume in your neighborhood before that Halloween, or since? They both shook their head. No, Karen said, and we've asked around, discreetly. None of our neighbors saw any child in a ghost costume that night. We've looked at every other doorbell camera video that got posted to our neighborhood Facebook group. Hours of footage from dozens of houses. That ghost doesn't appear in any of them. It was only on our camera, only with our children. And only for 26 seconds, James added. After that timestamp, it's just Emma and Lucas again, alone on the porch. The ghost is gone, like it was never there at all. I left Connecticut that evening, with copies of the photographs Karen had shown me, stored on an encrypted drive I kept in a locked box under a false name. I didn't know what I was dealing with anymore. A haunting? A cover-up? Something worse? But I knew one thing with certainty. The ghost child was connected to Sarah's corn maze. Same costume, same impossible wrongness. And I had a feeling if I kept digging, I'd find more. I was right. The third story, Belmont, Massachusetts, October the 31st, 2018. This one found me. I woke up on November 3rd, 2018 to discover that someone had slipped an envelope under my apartment door. No postage, no return address, Just my name written in neat printed letters. Benjamin Marquez. Inside was a USB drive and a handwritten note on unlined paper. You're looking for these stories. This one happened 3 days ago. You have 48
hours before it's gone. Make it count. No signature, no identifying information. I stared at that note for a long time, my coffee going cold in my hand. Someone was watching me. Someone knew what I was researching.
And instead of threatening me or trying to stop me, they were helping. That scared me more than anything else so far. I plugged the USB drive into an air-gapped laptop I kept for exactly these situations. No internet connection, no network access, isolated from everything. I've learned to be paranoid. Paranoia keeps you alive when you're digging into things that powerful people want buried. The drive contained 3 files. The first was a PDF scan of a police report from Belmont, Massachusetts. Dated November 1st, 2018, the incident was listed as Suspicious Activity Welfare Check. The reporting officer's narrative was brief and bureaucratic, but certain details jumped out. Responded to 447 Oakwood Drive at 0247 hours regarding a possible intruder. Homeowner, redacted, reported being awakened by sounds of children laughing outside the residence. Upon investigation, homeowner observed approx. 8:12 children in Halloween costumes standing in the street directly in front of the house. Children were not moving or speaking when observed. When homeowner turned on porch lights, children remained stationary. Homeowner became concerned and called 911. Upon arrival, no children were present. Searched immediate area, no signs of individuals matching description. Homeowner appeared shaken but coherent, no evidence of drug, alcohol use, no signs of forced entry or attempted burglary. Advised homeowner to call if activity resumed. Clear. At 0319 hours, standard stuff really, could be a prank. Could be nothing except for the second file on the USB drive. It was a video, MOV format, 23 seconds long. The file name was Oakwood Street Cam 131 Tidstoi Do 45 MOV. I opened it. The footage was from a street-facing security camera mounted high enough to capture a wide view of a residential road. The timestamp confirmed it was recorded at 2:45 a.m. on November 1st, 2018. Halloween night, technically, since it was past midnight. The street was empty at first. Sodium street lamps cast pools of orange light. Fallen leaves skidded across the asphalt. Normal. At the 4-second mark, they appeared, not walked into frame. Appeared. One moment the street was empty, the next moment 12 children in Halloween costumes were standing in the middle of the road, arranged in a perfect
circle.
I could identify some of the costumes: a witch, a vampire, a superhero, what looked like a princess, a pirate. And in the center of the circle, slightly taller than the others, was the ghost child in the white sheet. They didn't move, didn't fidget or look around or do any of the small unconscious movements that living bodies make. They just stood there in their perfect circle, utterly still, for 18 seconds, and then, all at once, they turned their heads toward the camera. Every single one of them moving in perfect synchronization. Even the ghost, its eye holes fixing on the lens with that same empty darkness I'd seen in the Whitman's doorbell footage. The video ended. I watched it 11 times in a row, each viewing adding a new layer of wrongness to my understanding. The way they moved was inhuman, too precise, too synchronized, like puppets controlled by a single hand. The way their costumes didn't quite fit right, as if the things inside them were the wrong shape. The way the ghost stood in the center, clearly the leader, clearly in control. And the shadows. God, the shadows. Under those sodium street lamps, every child should have cast a clear shadow. But their shadows were wrong. They overlapped and merged, creating a single dark pool beneath the circle that seemed deeper than it should be, darker than the surrounding night, and full of movement. Things shifting and writhing in that collective shadow, shapes that resolved almost into faces before dissolving again. The third file on the USB was a text document containing a single paragraph. The homeowner's name is Patricia Morse. She's a 67-year-old retired librarian. She lives alone. Since that night, she has called the police 43 times, reporting the same thing: children in costumes standing outside her house between 2 and 3 a.m. Every time, the police find nothing. They've started ignoring her calls. They think she's experiencing dementia or paranoid delusions. She's not. I've been monitoring her street. They come back every night. Always between 2 and 3 a.m. Always the same circle. Always with the ghost in the center. They're waiting for something. Or someone. You should talk to her before they take her away. They're scheduling a psychiatric evaluation next week. I was on a bus to Belmont 6 hours later. Patricia Morse's house was a small, well-maintained Cape Cod at the end of a quiet street. I arrived at 4:30 p.m., the autumn sun already sinking toward the horizon, shadows growing long across the manicured lawns. I rang the doorbell and waited, very aware of the security camera pointed directly at me. The woman who answered was small and neat, with white hair pulled back in a bun and eyes that were both sharp and exhausted. She looked at me the way you'd look at a telemarketer, resigned annoyance mixed with the faint hope you might go away quickly. Ms. Morse, my name is Ben Marquez. I'm a journalist and I'm researching. I know who you are, she interrupted. Her voice was crisp, the accent unmistakably old Boston. You're the one asking questions about Halloween incidents that disappear from the news. Someone told me you might come by. Come in, but be quick about it. I don't like to have the door open after sunset. She ushered me inside with surprising urgency, locked the door behind me, and engaged both a deadbolt and a chain. Every window I could see had heavy curtains drawn tight. The house was lit by what seemed like every available lamp and overhead light blazing so bright it was almost uncomfortable. I keep the lights on, Patricia said, catching my expression. All of them, all the time. I know what you're thinking, crazy old woman, losing her mind, afraid of the dark. But I'm not crazy, Mr. Marquez. I'm afraid of what's in the dark. There's a difference. She led me to her kitchen and poured 2 cups of tea without asking if I wanted any. We sat at a small table by a window whose curtains were drawn so tightly I couldn't see even a sliver of the outside. Tell me what happened, I said. Patricia wrapped both hands around her teacup as if the warmth was the only thing keeping her grounded. Halloween night. I was asleep. I'm a light sleeper, always have been. Around 2:30 in the morning, I heard children laughing. Not the normal kind of laughing you hear during the day. It sounded like a recording played backward
and then forward again. Does that make sense? Like the sound was wrong, inverted somehow. I nodded, thinking of the laughter in the corn maze video, the layered, out-of-sync quality. I got up and looked out my bedroom window, she continued.
My bedroom faces the street, and there they were, 12 children in Halloween costumes, standing in a circle in the middle of the road, standing completely still, at 2:30 in the morning. No parents, no flashlights, no bags of candy, just standing there. Did you recognize any of them? I asked. Kids from the neighborhood? That's what made me call the police, Patricia said. I've lived on this street for 40 years. I know every child in this neighborhood. I know their faces, their heights, the way they walk.
I used to be a librarian at the elementary school. I know these children. She paused, her jaw tightening. Those weren't them. Those were costumes with the wrong things inside.
What do you mean? Their proportions were off. Arms too long, heads too big or too small. And the way they stood, children don't stand that still. Children fidget, they shift their weight, they move. These things were like statues.
And then she stopped, closing her eyes. Then they all looked at my window at exactly the same time.
All 12 of them turning their heads in perfect unison. I didn't have any lights on in my bedroom. It was pitch dark. There was no way they should have been able to see me, but they looked right at me. I could feel them looking. And the one in the center? I prompted gently. The ghost costume? Her eyes snapped open. How did you know about that? I've seen it before, in other places. Other stories that got erased. Patricia studied my face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. The ghost was the worst one. It didn't just look at me. It raised its arm so slowly like it was underwater and pointed directly at my window, directly at me. And then all 12 of them walked forward 3 steps closer to my house, still in perfect formation, still silent except for that awful backward laughter. That's when you called 911. Yes! And by the time the police arrived, they were gone. Just gone. Like they'd never been there at all. The officers searched the street, the yards, behind the houses, nothing. They looked at me like I was a confused old woman who'd had a bad dream. She laughed bitterly. But I have cameras. I showed them the footage. They watched those things appear out of nowhere and stand in that circle. They watched them look at my house. And you know what the officer said? What? He said. It was probably teenagers playing a prank with mannequins. Mannequins, on strings or something, moved in and out of frame during a camera glitch. He actually stood in my kitchen and told me I'd recorded mannequins. But they kept coming. Back, I said. Patricia's hands tightened around her teacup. Every night, every single night since Halloween. Between 2 and 3 a.m. they appear in that circle. Sometimes they just stand there. Sometimes they walk a few steps closer to my house. The ghost always points at me, always knows which window I'm near, even if I move to different rooms. I've called the police 43 times. They stopped responding after the 15th call. They said I needed to speak to someone, get help. They sent a social worker. She recommended psychiatric evaluation. Do you still have the footage? I asked. All of it? Of course, I'm a librarian. I document everything. She pulled out a tablet and opened a folder containing dozens of video files, each labeled with a date and time. Pick any night. They're all the same. I picked a file at random, November 7th, 2018, 2:34 a.m. The video showed exactly what Patricia had described. 12 costumed figures in a circle, standing impossibly still. The ghost in the center pointing toward the camera. But as I watched, I noticed something new. They're closer, I said. What? In this video from November 7th, they're closer to your house than they were in the original footage from November 1st. Maybe 10 feet closer. Patricia's face went pale. I know, she whispered. Every few nights they move forward, not much, sometimes just a few feet.
But they're getting closer. At the rate they're moving. She did the math in her head, and I watched the color drain from her face completely. They'll reach my front door in 12 days. On November 19th.
We sat in silence for a moment, the only sound the humming of the refrigerator and the ticking of a clock somewhere in the house. What do they want? Patricia asked finally. Her voice was very small. What are they? I don't know, I admitted. But I'm going to find out. Can you send me all of this footage, everything you have? She nodded, and airdropped the files to my phone. Over 3 weeks of footage documenting the nightly appearances of something that shouldn't exist. There's one more thing, Patricia said, as I stood to leave. Last night, they did something different. Different how? The ghost spoke. My blood went cold. Spoke? You could hear it? On the camera audio, just one word. It was very faint, like a whisper from very far away, but I heard it clearly. She pulled up the video from November 2nd, 2:47 a.m. and turned up the volume. The footage was the same as all the others, the circle, the stillness, the pointing ghost. But at the 17-second mark, just barely audible under the ambient night sounds, there was a voice, a child's voice but wrong, in that same backward inverted way Patricia had described. It echoed and overlapped with itself, creating a dissonant harmony that made my skin crawl. It said, "Soon." I left Belmont with a promise to Patricia that I'd figure this out, though I had no idea how I was going to keep that promise. On the bus back to Providence, I reviewed all the footage she'd given me, watching those costumed things inch closer to her house night after night, with mechanical patience, and I started noticing patterns. The 12 children never changed position relative to each other. Always the same circle, always the same spacing, as if their formation was locked. The ghost was always in the center, always pointing, but the other costumes rotated. On November 1st, the witch was to the ghost's right. On November 2nd, the vampire was in that position. On November 3rd, the pirate. They were cycling through some kind of sequence. I made a chart documenting which costume appeared in which position each night. It took me 4 hours and 2 legal pads, but eventually I saw it. They were spelling something. If you assigned each costume a letter, A for the astronaut, B for the butterfly, C for the cowboy, and so on, and tracked their positions in the circle over the course of 3 weeks, the sequence formed words. "We are coming, she will play." My hands were shaking. I pulled out my phone and called Patricia. She answered on the first ring, as if she'd been waiting by the phone. "Ms. Morse, I need to ask you something. Have you ever had any connection to Willow Creek, Oregon, or
Ashford, Connecticut? No, she said immediately. I've lived in Massachusetts my entire life. Why? Just trying to find a connection, something that links all of these incidents together.
I hesitated, then asked the question that had been gnawing at me since I'd left her house. "Do you have any children? Grandchildren?" "I had a daughter," Patricia said quietly. "Emma. She died in 1989. She was 8 years old. I'm Baya." "So sorry. Can I ask, how did she die?" There was a long pause. When Patricia spoke again, her voice was thick with tears. "It was Halloween. She was trick-or-treating with her older brother. They were walking home after dark. A car came around the corner too fast. Didn't see them. My sons survived. Emma didn't. She was wearing a..." Patricia's voice broke. "She was wearing a ghost costume, white sheet with eye holes. She'd made it herself." The pieces clicked together with horrible clarity. "Ms. Morse," I said carefully, "I need you to leave your house tonight. Go stay with friends, family, anyone. Don't be there on November 19th, please." "They'll just follow me," she whispered. "Won't they? They know my name. They know who I am. They're not trying to find me. They already have me. They're just getting closer so I can't run." She was right. I knew she was right, but I couldn't bring myself to say it. "I'll figure something out," I promised. "Just please, leave the house. Give me time to find help." "What kind of help?" Patricia asked. "Who do you call when the things that shouldn't
exist are coming to your door? When the police think you're crazy? When the government makes the evidence disappear?" I didn't have an answer. "I'll call you tomorrow," I said finally. Just stay safe. Keep the lights on. She hung.
Up without saying goodbye. The fourth story, Providence, Rhode Island, October 31st, 2019. I didn't find this one. It found me. The events in Belmont had shaken me more than I cared to admit. I spent weeks trying to trace connections between Sarah, the Whitmans, and Patricia Morse. Different states, different years, no obvious links between the victims except for the timing, Halloween, and the presence of the ghost child. I contacted paranormal researchers, folklorists, academics who studied urban legends and mass hysteria. Most ignored me. A few responded with polite skepticism. One, a professor of mythology at Boston University, sent me a brief email that read, "The archetype you're describing resembles certain European legends about hollow children or skin puppets, spirits that wear the appearance of children to gain access to homes and families. In every version of these legends, they hunt people connected to genuine child deaths, parents who lost children, siblings who survived accidents, teachers who failed to protect students. They feed on grief. Stop investigating this. You're
painting a target on yourself." I didn't stop. I couldn't. Patricia was counting on me. Sarah was still drawing corn. Emma Whitman was sleeping with the lights on and wanted to change her name. This wasn't folklore.
This was real, and it was happening, and someone needed to understand it. November 19th came and went. Patricia called me that morning, her voice surprisingly calm. "They didn't come last night," she said. "First time in 3 weeks. The
street was empty." "That's good," I said, though something about it felt wrong. "Maybe they're gone, maybe—" "They're not gone," Patricia interrupted. "They're just finished with me. They got what they came for." "What?"
Do you mean? I mean, I understand now. They weren't coming to hurt me. They were coming to remind me, to make me remember Emma every single night, to make me relive losing her over and over again until I couldn't think about anything else." She laughed softly, and the sound was broken. "It worked. I can't remember the last time I thought about anything except that Halloween night in 1989. I can't remember what Emma's voice sounded like when she was happy.
"I can only remember her screaming. They took all my other memories of her and left me with just that one." "Patricia, I'm tired, Ben. I'm going to sleep now. Really sleep. For the first time in weeks. Don't call me again. There's—"
"Nothing more you can do?" She hung up. I tried calling back. No answer. I tried again an hour later. Still no answer. 3 days later, I received a notification from a Google alert I'd set up months ago. Patricia Morse's obituary appeared in the Belmont Citizen Herald. Natural causes. Died peacefully in her sleep. Donations could be made to the local library in her memory. I wanted to believe it was natural. I wanted to believe she'd simply been an elderly woman under stress whose heart had finally given out. But I knew better. They'd come for her grief, fed on it, and when there was nothing left, they'd moved on. And I was starting to suspect I knew where they were moving to. October 31st, 2019, my apartment in Providence, 11:17 p.m. I'd spent Halloween night barricaded in my loft with every light on, every door locked, every window covered. I wasn't taking trick-or-treaters. I wasn't celebrating. I was waiting because 2 days earlier I'd received another untraceable email. No text in the body, just an image attachment, a photograph of my apartment building taken from across the street, and standing on the sidewalk directly in front of my entrance, barely visible in the streetlight, was a small figure in a white sheet with eye holes. They knew where I lived. At 11:17 p.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. I let it ring 4 times before answering. "Hello?" "They're outside." It was a child's voice, young, maybe 7 or 8, but with that same wrong quality, the backward inverted echo, the layered harmonics. "We've been waiting for you." "Who is this?" I demanded, though I already knew. "You asked questions. You looked for us. You wanted to understand." The voice giggled, and the sound made my teeth ache. "Now you do. Come outside and play." "I'm not, as we have someone who wants to see you, someone you've been looking for." My blood froze. "Who?" "The teacher from the corn, the one who draws and draws and draws. She came to play with us. She's been playing for a very long time." "Do you want to say hello?" There was a rustling sound, like the phone being passed to someone else, then a voice I'd heard only once before in a video that had been scrubbed from the internet. Sarah Kincaid's voice, flat and affectless and wrong. "Ben," she said, "they want me to tell you it's your turn. They want me to tell you that you've been invited. They want me to tell you—" Her voice hitched, and for just a moment I heard real emotion break through, pure, absolute terror. "Don't
Come outside. Don't look. Don't answer the door. Don't." The line went dead. I sat frozen in my chair, phone pressed to my ear, listening to dead air. Then slowly I stood and walked to my window. The curtain was drawn, but there was
a gap of maybe half an inch at the edge. I leaned forward and looked down at the street below. They were there. Not 12 this time. Dozens. Maybe 50 or 60 children in Halloween costumes filling the street in front of my building. Standing in perfect stillness. All of them facing my window. All of them staring up at exactly where I stood. And in the center of the crowd, the ghost in the white sheet raised one arm and pointed directly at me. I stumbled backward, my heart hammering. The lights in my apartment flickered once, twice, then steadied. But in that moment of darkness, I'd seen something that made my rational mind try to shut down completely. The costumes were empty. In that brief flicker, when the light changed, I'd seen through them. There was nothing inside, no children, no bodies, no substance, just hollow fabric animated by something that wore the shape of innocence to hide its true nature. My phone rang again, same unknown number I didn't want to answer. Every instinct screamed at me to ignore it, to hide, to pretend this wasn't happening. But my hand moved anyway, bringing the phone to my ear. "Come down and play," the voice said. Not one child's voice this time. Many voices overlapping and echoing. "Come down and join us. We have questions for you. We want to know what, you know. We want to know who sent you looking. We want to know who's helping you." "No one's helping me," I said. My voice was shaking. "I'm just a journalist." Liar. The word came from multiple throats simultaneously. Someone gave you files. Someone sent you videos. Someone told you where to look. Who was it? I thought about the USB drives, the untraceable emails, the warnings that had guided my investigation. Someone was helping me, had been helping
me from the start. Someone who knew about these things and was trying to expose them, and these hollow children wanted to know who. "I don't know," I said, honestly. "They never identified themselves." "Then we'll ask them ourselves."
When they come to save you, when they try to stop us, they always try to stop us. The voices giggled in dissonant harmony. "Come outside, Benjamin. We're very patient. We can wait. We've been waiting for 30 years. We can wait 30 more, but you'll get hungry. You'll get tired. Eventually, you'll have to open the door." The call ended. I looked at my supplies. I had food for maybe 3 days, water for a week if I rationed. My laptop was charged. I could work remotely, tell people I was sick, buy myself time. But how much time, and what happened when it ran out? I spent the rest of Halloween night sitting in my chair, watching those things stand vigil in the street below. They didn't move, didn't leave. Cars drove past them without stopping, without even seeming to notice them. A couple walking their dog passed right through the middle of the crowd without reacting at all, as if the costumed figures weren't even there. Maybe they weren't? Not really. Maybe they existed in some space between reality and whatever else was out there, visible only to those they'd marked. At 3 a.m., my doorbell rang. Then it rang again, and again, and again, over and over, an insistent rhythm that went on for 20 minutes before finally stopping. I didn't go to the door. I didn't look through the peephole. I just sat in my chair with every light blazing and waited for sunrise. When dawn finally came, they were gone. The street was empty, normal. A woman jogged past with her dog. A delivery truck made its morning rounds. The world moved on completely, unaware that something impossible had been standing in its midst just hours ago. But I knew they'd be back, because I'd crossed a line. I'd looked too deep, asked too many questions, connected too many dots that someone had tried to erase. And now they knew my name. That was 4 years ago. I'm still alive, still researching, still trying to understand what these things are and what they want. I don't go out on Halloween anymore. I've moved 3 times since that night in Providence, never staying in one place longer than 6 months. I keep every light on after dark. I document everything, and every October 31st at exactly 11:17 p.m., my phone rings. Unknown number. I never answer anymore, but I know who's calling. They're patient. They're waiting.
And someday, when I let my guard down, when I forget to keep the lights on or I'm too tired to stay vigilant, they'll be there, standing in their perfect formation. The ghost in the center, pointing. I've accepted that I'm marked. There's no escape from that. But I can still share what I know. I can still document the pattern. Because these 4 stories, Sarah in the corn maze, Emma Whitman and her doorbell camera, Patricia Morse and her nightly visitors, and my own encounter, they're not isolated incidents.
They're part of something larger, older, something that's been hunting grief and guilt and loss for generations. The news tried to erase these stories. The authorities dismissed them. The witnesses were silenced or discredited. But the stories are still here. Because truth doesn't disappear just because someone tries to bury it. It just goes underground waiting for someone to dig it up again. I'm still digging. And if you're reading this, if you've made it this far, then maybe you're digging too. Maybe you've seen something you can't explain. Maybe you've heard children laughing at the wrong hour of night. Maybe you've spotted someone in a Halloween costume standing too still, watching too intently, existing just a little too wrong. If you have, I need you to know 3 things. First, you're not crazy. It's real. All of it. Second, don't try to investigate it alone. Document everything, but don't go looking for them. They'll find you eventually. They always do. Third, if you ever receive an untraceable email with information about Halloween incidents that disappeared from the news, forward it to me. Because somewhere out there, someone is fighting these things. Someone is trying to expose them. And I think, I hope, that if enough of us share information, if enough of us refuse to forget, we might finally understand what they are and how to stop them. Until then, keep your lights on after dark. Don't answer your door on Halloween night after 11 p.m. And if you ever see a child in a white ghost costume standing too still, watching too closely, don't engage, don't run, just close your curtains, lock your doors, and wait for sunrise. They feed on attention. They hunt through recognition. The moment you acknowledge them, the moment you show fear, you've invited them in. I learned that too late. But maybe you won't. Stay safe out there. And remember, some costumes aren't costumes
At all.
They're just skin-deep disguises for something much older and hungrier, wearing the shape of innocence to hide what it really is. Something that's been waiting in the spaces between Halloweens, patient and eternal, for someone to finally see.
Clearly I saw it. And now it sees me every Halloween, every year, forever. But I still don't open the door.